Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Frontline Advantage. We have a very special guest today, Dominique Reese. Dominique is someone I first met at Plug and Play when she was involved with the supply chain program. Today, she's head of DE&I at Plug and Play and has been instrumental in leading a new initiative called Drive that she's going to be talking to us about today. Welcome, Dominique.
Hi, Vivek. Thanks for having me and good to see you again.
Same, thanks. Why don't you please start by telling the audience a little bit about your background and then we can dive in.
Yeah, I have been at Plug and Play for about 5 years now. Interestingly enough, I actually started here as an intern on the supply chain team back in 2018. I was at the time going to school for psychology and sociology at Cal State East Bay here in Hayward, California. And I eventually worked my way up until full-time, and I was leading the head of programs for the supply chain vertical in 2019, accelerating about 500 startups, including Vivek. And from there, I then about 2 years ago stepped away from the supply chain team to follow my passion in social justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion, to now being the director and head of DE&I for Plug and Play Tech Center. So that's where I'm at now.
Awesome. And for those of you who are not familiar, Plug and Play is one of the largest corporate innovation startup platforms out there. They have been instrumental for us. Fantastic experience, and would encourage all of you out there thinking about working with enterprises to consider this program. Dominique, I'd love to hear a little bit about the Drive initiative, which is something that kicked off, I think officially it might have been months ago, less than a year ago for sure. Tell us all about Drive.
Yeah, so DRIVE is an acronym. It stands for Diversity, Respect, Inclusion, Visibility, and Equity. We have been working on this program for Plug and Play for officially 2 years, but we officially launched in November of last year. And it aims to do different things, but first and foremost, supporting diverse founders by giving them the tools and resources we have been given as a company and pushing that back out to different diverse and minority-owned founders within tech. But as we continue to bring in these founders into our ecosystem, we want to be sure to educate our ecosystem on the importance of why we are doing this work. As Plug and Play, we are positioned in Silicon Valley, which is a very important area when it comes to tech, when it comes to VC and investing. And we want to make sure we do our role in leading the conversation with our other counterparts here in the area. And obviously, the number in investing in diverse founders is not great. And with 60% of funding coming from the area of Silicon Valley, we are held responsible for making sure those numbers increase throughout the years. So raising awareness with our innovation platform of corporate partners and having them be with us along this journey on giving more resources, funding, and tools to diverse founders. So what does diverse mean to Plug and Play? It's whatever the U.S. considers as diverse. So that touches anywhere from race, gender, sexuality, veteran status, accessibility. Any and everything that is considered a minority group within the U.S. is where we are targeting to help those groups.
When you speak with a lot of these large enterprises, there's definitely, it seems there's more of a movement toward DE&I. There's, supplier diversity officers. There's, chief DE&I folks in companies. What are the conversations like? What are the reactions? What are they saying and inquiring about?
Yeah, I think a lot of times these larger corporations are aiming towards helping underserved communities, which is great because that's where the start of all of these bigger startups come from. They typically come from a minority background, a minority-owned group in a certain community. So I noticed the corporations are really playing their role in giving back to the community. That can be either financially or in the form of different just charitable giving. But I think a lot of them have a lot of tools and resources that they're not really quite sure where to direct them. And that's where the conversations I've been having with them is going of, you have a huge platform, you have a bunch of tools and resources. rather than just blindly giving money out. Why don't you meet face to face with founders? Why don't you meet face to face with community members to ensure that you are going the extra mile to make a lasting change? So I think it's been a lot of strategic conversation on how do we put our funds and resources together to create long lasting and impactful change and pushing the needle forward in the many struggles that have been going on in the world.
When you define success, and you touched on this a little bit, it's increasing funding for founders. Are there other metrics you utilize that you're thinking about and developing that how you're sort of going to be defining success with these cohorts and for the enterprises?
Yeah, I would say definitely funding, but also the introductions that are being made is something that we pride ourselves always on in Plug and Play. We have a huge corporate innovation platform. The reason why startups come to us is for those customer introductions. So really focusing on connecting diverse founders with corporations that have that goal in mind as well for their supplier diversity initiatives would be definitely one of the top ones. And then we are also going to be distributing non-dilutive grants to level the playing field out for diverse founders. So not just the form of investment, like an equity investment, but also the non-dilutive side to help with different costs, such as traveling, such as buying conference tickets, resources for those founders as well. So really making sure that we're on top of those grants from Plug and Play, which I know this cohort we will be distributing very soon. But I would say that is another metric. And then also when it comes to mentorship. So that's something that we really want to ensure that we are tracking and having a mentorship program that is holistic. So not one mentor that focuses on one thing, but having a mentorship program that focuses on marketing, strategy, HR, legal, and making sure that we have the best quality mentors within the industry to assist our founders within that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, as an early stage startup, the beginning stages are often the most challenging to just get those at-bats, the opportunities to get into those enterprises and be able to prove your value proposition, even especially in environments like the one we're in right now where there may be economic headwinds that people are concerned about. And so there's often even more reasons for them to drag their feet or delay looking at ways to interact with startups and diverse founders. There were things in the news this week around culture wars, LGBTQ, specifically large retail stores, deciding to make changes based on backlashes. This idea of culture wars in America, the economic sentiment, do you see these things as sort of short-term challenges, as ebb and flows, but as sort of the long run, we're very much focused moving forward on increasing diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging in large enterprises and having that translate through other parts of society and other organizations, mid-market SMBs even, or what do you sort of think about in terms of the future and drive type initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think most importantly and first and foremost, it's when you look at larger organizations that are starting DEI initiatives, I think it's always important to look where it's stemming from within the organization. And a lot of times, a lot of organizations are putting this under their HR umbrella, which I don't think is the right route to go. That is just my personal opinion, and I know there's been conversation around that as well. But it's something that needs to be integrated into the whole organization and not just out of one bucket. And it should be something that carries throughout. So I think that is first and foremost what stems from that. And I think, within the world and within society, there will always be culture wars going on just based on a matter of opinion, but how that is being handled and organizations understanding that their brand and their logo is something that really holds true to consumers. And understanding what it is you put out there really has an influence on the people that are buying your product is the most important thing, which is why diversity within an organization needs to be in many different parts. Diversity within voices, within opinions, and not just having it stem from one area of the business. That way you are catering towards what society looks like. Society is we are in a very diverse world. So to have your organization have representation from all aspects of society is where it's most important and where I feel it will push the needle in terms of these culture wars.
Yeah, it's a great point. You talked a little bit about HR. It's something we've noticed as well. When HR, say, reports into a CFO or reports into legal, those are organizations where it's a little more challenging for us to even be able to provide the offering that we might be pushing. When HR has a seat at the executive table and basically the CEO is saying, hey, no, this is an important department. We actually want to hear what our people have to say, what our HR leaders have to say, and they're not constrained by other departments. They're seen as equals. It's hugely more beneficial into being able to actually work with them to create positive change. And so I think that point you bring up is huge. The last thing we want to see organizations do is doing DE&I for the sake of a checkbox to say they're doing it as a feel-good measure rather than understanding the value and the business benefits it actually provides. And the more companies can be very honest and realistic and saying, wait a minute, no, this is a competitive advantage. Our target customer base is representative of, the U.S. population. And what does the U.S. population look like? What does our workforce look like? What do our executive leaders look like? I also want to say, we, as you know, focus a lot on serving this part of the workforce. It's often people who are disadvantaged, who've not had a voice traditionally, are used to facing retaliation. Often they're minority. And so the more we can in our work, and even to our prospective, clients out there, for those of you that are open to it, we very much appreciate the opportunity to present content and questions that allow us to bring up conversations to your workforce in a safe manner. We've seen proof points with some of our customers who've gotten introduced through Plug and Play, actually talking about it to us, saying one of the most valuable pieces of information they discovered from it wasn't even just being able to assess the knowledge their workforce has by asking questions through the kiosk or even being able to show the correct answers through them. It was that it actually fostered organic, workplace discussions. And I think that's also another goal to strive toward, which is moving away from this top down, hey, you're being forced and mandated to learn about this and talk about this, and really make it a movement where we're educating people and allowing them to bottoms up, bring up these topics, ideally in a safe way that just becomes natural and normal, and not one of sort of clashing and battling and providing misinformation on topics. So, this is something we as a company also very much want to continue highlighting to companies and organizations. Is there anything else you want to cover, say, on today's topic, Dominique, related to Drive, working with these enterprises and founders that you want to share with our community?
I think just overall, and what we've had in our findings since we are a global company is, diversity means something different in all areas of the world, but that doesn't mean that conversations shouldn't continue. And Plug and Play, we have many locations in the Middle East, in the APAC region, and sometimes diversity conversations are minimized in those areas. But as Plug and Play and our employees, we really pride ourselves in being the ones to start those conversations and also educate people on the importance of why these conversations need to be had. And I think it's to just wanting our community members as well as our employees to feel welcomed. So even when it comes to surveys that we're putting out, a lot of times outside of the US, some of our counterparts feel uncomfortable with the questions that we are asking, but we then turn it back to them and say, well, it may be uncomfortable because this is not something that you identify as or you represent as, but think of a person where they normally don't see themselves represented on a list. And when we ask them those questions and they're able to identify themselves in that aspect, it makes them feel welcomed and it makes them feel heard. So our target is, even if we're not catering to the larger community, but if there's one individual that we touch or make them feel welcomed or heard, that's the goal that we strive for.
That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I want to thank Dominique for her time today. She's extremely busy, so I was honored to get some time on her calendar. And thank you to her and Plug and Play for having Team Force be part of Drive. And if there's any founders out there that want to learn more about it, happy to talk about it. And for those of you enterprises, happy to talk about drive type initiatives we can help implement for you. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.